everybody. Welcome back to the Knowledge Broker Podcast, mini episode number 3. Like I said in a previous episode, but if this is the first time you're joining us, these are 8 little mini episodes all about real estate to tide you over until Knowledge Broker Season 2 comes back in March. So, for the full episode is about home inspections. But to start off, I want us to really narrow in on what is a home inspection and why is it so important.
Cool. Good question.
Thank you.
Yeah. Home inspections or building inspections, inspections in general are very much an opportunity to go out there and do your due diligence. Allows you to have a closer opportunity to look at the home or the building or whatever you might be purchasing, even if it's land. But let's stick with a home inspection for the sake of talking about houses. When we hire home inspectors, and home inspectors, they're individuals that get certifications amongst home inspecting, or I guess there's the Canadian Home Inspectors Association. I think it's CAMPBELL. There's a few other associations out there as well that license individuals to do so. So what we do when we go through and we buy a house, typically we go through and we fall in love with the feelings and the emotions, and then we never get really the chance to go and look at all the plugs, the electrical, the plumbing, the appliances, the roof, the attic, all these little things that are the components. So we fall in love with the feeling, and then
the damages.
No, exactly. We don't know what the damages are yet except for the price tag.
Yeah.
So now we've bought the house and we need to do our due diligence, which is going back through with an inspector to do a very close, detailed report.
So you do this after you've bought a house or before?
We do it. Sometimes it's happened before. Okay. If it's a really competitive house, meaning it's a very sought after home. And we know that when we come to an offer time that perhaps we don't want to have conditions. So we'll do all of our due diligence beforehand. So sometimes we do home inspections before we actually put an offer in. Typically they are after the offer because we do a 5-day, maybe even a 7-day home inspection clause that allows us 5 to 7 days to go back through with our inspector to do a thorough investigation. So the home inspection side of things is us going back through, and the inspector will typically do for the outside of the house, meaning the roof, the bricks, the masonry, the decks, the landscape, the drainage, anything else that they can see that are identifiable problems. But there's typically a lot of the spots that they go and look at are the same spots they look at for every single house. And then they'll go on the inside, and I find it's just easier. My mind goes top to bottom. Start with the interior of the attic, work through from the upstairs, go to the main floor, and then go to the basement. And they'll typically look at all the plumbing, the electrical, windows, insulation, moisture, cupboards, appliances, caulking in the bathrooms, you name it, everything that you can think of. Like, there should be almost every square inch in that house looked at closely.
So in that case, because there's someone coming in and looking at your house with like a fine-tooth comb, how can you prepare for it?
If you're selling your house or if you're buying?
Let's say selling.
Okay. If you're selling your house, with Knowledge Broker, for instance, we provide a 1-page prep guide that allows people to get their house ready for a home inspector to come through. So when home inspectors come through the house, you are going to have someone come through that's not necessarily construction capacity, but someone that's going to be moving things around. So it's best to move those things out of the way before they get there, meaning they're going to be going in the attic. So your attic access is usually in one of the closets upstairs. So move things out of the closet so they can get into the attic very easily. The last thing we want is having like your clothing or whatever else is in your closet be covered in attic dust or insulation, whatever else comes out of the attic.
Ew.
God forbid an animal, but
oh my God.
Yeah. That being said, they'll move things out of the way so that they have access to these things.
Yeah.
I personally find that if you maintain a really good home, you're already ready for a home inspector.
So if, for example, say if I know like a certain outlet in my house doesn't work, should I let him know right away or let him figure it out for himself?
I find I'm an open person. So if something's not working, people always feel like if you tell them up front, especially in my experience, if you're really open up front, they trust you. If they have to find out for themselves, they start to lose trust for your home and potentially for you. So I'd say if you know of certain issues, I would even say them up front to your real estate agent so that your real estate agent can usually give you the advice to repair. If repair is not an option for affordability or whatever purpose, timing, at least they can disclose it to the home buyers at the very beginning so that it's one of these things where if they tell people early, people stop caring about it as much. It's because it's kind of like you tell them, it's like ripping the Band-Aid off. Tell them early. If they're still interested, they know about the issues, so that when it comes time to actually go through the home, they're already aware of it.
So then in that case, what happens if you've bought a house and you do the home inspection and you realize that there's like something wrong with like the structure or the plumbing? What happens then?
All homes have something.
Yeah.
So if we go with something major, like a structural thing, which people say is major, but major typically goes because it's expensive. Can it be major to the point that the house could fall down? Not typically. But if there's a structural problem, which usually is water leakage.
Okay.
We live in Canada. We have frost lines. The earth moves. So do our walls.
Yeah.
If the earth moves, so do our walls. And walls can get cracks, and all of a sudden there's water coming through. So there's a major investigation that's usually done when it comes to water seepage, because you want to know if the cracks are just water, or the cracks, if you leave them long enough, they'll actually start to get worse. So concrete can actually start to crack before you know it. Maybe you have some shifting. If you have shifting, it affects the entire house. So if you have any major structural problems or major plumbing or major electrical, they usually allow us to take out the magnifying glass, hire an even further investigation, someone that specializes strictly in structural problems, electrical or plumbing.
Yeah.
Allow that to come through, whether it means digging on the outside or taking down some drywall on the inside. The problem has to be resolved, whether it's for the person that's going to buy it or the person that lives there. I mean, ultimately, we need to maintain a good home. If you have major problems, they just lead to more.
Yes. So does that become a problem of the buyer or the seller? Like if you've bought the house, is it your problem now, or is it still the seller's responsibility?
Typically, it's both. The seller owns the house. And if the problems were stated up front,
yeah,
and the buyer buys the house knowing that those are the issues that are already with the home,
yeah,
and maybe the sellers price their house accordingly, well, at that point in time, the seller and the buyer have already made each other aware that that's an issue. So as long as people are in their perception of the problem is at the time that they put the offer in, to the point that they have to firm up on their condition. If we find that upon further investigation, the problem's far bigger than the buyer even expected in the seller.
Yeah.
At that point in time, the buyer would say, hey, this isn't what I bought. They can typically walk away.
Yeah.
Or they can try to renegotiate with the seller after the fact. They can turn around to the seller and say, hey, I was expecting a $5,000 job. This is more like a $30,000 job.
Oy.
And then you would turn around to the seller, and perhaps the buyer says, well, I'd like to get my guys to do it because I trust my guys. Maybe they'll probably aim for $30,000 off the price if they could, right? But maybe the seller says, no, like I know my guys can do it for 15. And before you know, it becomes a bit of a negotiation. So it's kind of like, that's why I say it's on both.
Yeah.
The seller doesn't necessarily have to do it unless they put in the agreement that the seller will fix all structural issues. So it's very much a case-by-case basis.
Interesting. So would you say that that's probably the biggest thing to worry about in a home inspection, is someone hasn't been honest? Or is there something else in your experience that has by far trumped all home inspection?
Honesty's tough, because if you're aware of something and you don't tell somebody of it, that's dishonest. If you're aware of something and you don't think it's a big deal and you don't tell anybody about it, well, then it's not necessarily negligent. It's more along the lines of, I find, just be super wide open about things. Make the comfort level no different if you get a relationship with two people. I find, make sure that they know everything about you so that there's no skeletons in the closet.
Date 1, flaws on the table.
Exactly. Date 2, keep going.
Date 3, that's when you fake
more.
it.
Yeah. And then the neat thing is, at least they know what they're getting into.
Yeah.
So on a home, I'd say honesty, it's you can't be too honest. I mean, if you turn around and you start talking about how there's ghosts, well, I mean, not everybody believes in ghosts, so maybe don't say ghosts. I don't necessarily even know if that's even something that people would consider a problem. Some people might say, I like ghosts. I mean, if you start giving a spin on your house that scares people, your real estate agent's probably going to say, easy. Like, that's not, you don't want to scare people. You have to go with stuff that's factual. Stuff that you can actually see, stuff that you've known about in your history with the home. So being super wide open and honest, I'd say there's no problem. There's actually probably no honesty level that can be hurtful.
Yeah. Well, that was what I was going to ask. Is there a point that you could be getting taken advantage of because you're so honest? Like, is there going to be any point where a real estate agent is like, hold back a little bit?
Yeah, this is why we tell people when they're selling their home to not be in the home when the home's being viewed.
Yeah.
So, for instance, say you get a seller. Let's just use an example. Say it's an elderly woman living alone, and she's really concerned about the front windows because they leak air.
Mm-hmm.
And she's home and she's like, I'm really worried about the windows. The windows leak air. It's one of these my major concerns, because maybe it's a major concern for her.
Yeah.
Because
she's an elderly woman, dead of winter.
Cost of money.
Yeah.
Also, maybe perhaps she sits in the chair nearby and it bugs her.
Yeah.
If she kind of goes out there and talks about these windows and how upsetting it is to her, before you know it, the home buyer, the potential buyer, could start focusing on it as well. Maybe they don't care about anything like that. They have no worries. They're going to put new windows in the entire house. But before you know it, all they're thinking about is that window.
Yes.
So, I mean, like, you can actually probably, being too honest, this is where you need that guidance. Having a real estate agent is the difference. If you're selling your own home, you have no one to tell you what to say and what not to say. You're going on your own gut instinct. This is where a real estate agent say that stuff that we need to say, that's stuff that you don't need to say. And it's best for, like, for instance, don't be home when they're showing it, because I know that you might feel compelled to be really honest, but it's almost like, don't make something of nothing.
Yeah. And honestly, I feel like that's probably the biggest thing you need to worry about with a home inspection, is being to pinpoint honest on certain things in your house.
Sure.
Because, like, what if a door squeaks?
Yeah.
You know, now you're thinking, oh, well, every door squeaks, or like something.
Sure.
Something as
and
silly as that.
And then before you know it, the home buyers, perhaps maybe it's a young couple, and the guy's sitting there going like, I don't have time to do all this kind of work.
I don't know how to fix a squeaky door.
So don't necessarily scare them. I'd say go with facts. The fear thing is more just knowing people.
I also think there's a way that you have to say it too. Like, you can't be like, oh my God, these windows, they've got leaky air. It's like, all right, here's the information I'm about to disclose to you.
Yeah.
Couple of the door is a little bit squeaky. Put some of that stuff on it and they'll be fine.
Sure.
The windows just need to be either like recocked, or you just got to get new windows. Got it. The floorboard sometimes creaks a little bit on the second last step on the staircase. Okay, got it. It's like also how you deliver the news.
100%.
Definitely makes a difference.
That's the difference between, like, inspectors that I work with are the inspectors that will go along, and as we said with the windows, they'll say, Josh, or the client, these are 23-year-old windows. They're on their last legs. You could probably get through by adding some caulking, doing a few things, but know that you're probably going to have to replace them in the next 5 years, maybe 2 years, whatever it is. Josh, the roof. And the roof is 17 years old. Typically the last 20. I don't see any major rolling problems with the curling of the shingles. At the same time, it is something to be aware of. So it's kind of like, just make sure everybody's aware and let them make their own decisions as to whether it's too scary for them or not.
Yeah. My last question is, because I have some family members who've just buying houses recently, and they were telling me about how when the buyers of their house came in to do the inspection, they brought like the aunts, the uncles, the kids, like the cousins, like everybody. They had a whole family. What do you have to say to people who do inspections like that? Like, is that necessary? Or as long as you have a good real estate agent and a home inspector, you probably don't need to bring the fam along too?
I mean, in a perfect world, I would say that the best people at the table are the people buying the home and the inspector.
Okay.
Adding the extra family components, you'd be surprised how when we go to buy something as home buyers or anything in this world, when it comes to our parents or aunts or uncles, it's all opinions.
Yes.
And before you know it, the opinions start coming out. It's like the holidays. So everything's all good going into the holidays because you're at home. It's your primary family. You're used to it. Then all of a sudden, aunts, uncles, grandmas come over and they start pointing things out that you're just like, and then before you know it, you're stressed out.
Yeah.
So, I mean, having a ton of family members in there, it's good for them to be a bit of a sounding board.
Yes.
But I've in my experience, I find it best if they allow the two people that are actually buying the home to do the inspection with the inspector. Mums and dads and family, extended, whatnot, they're going to get the report. They can review it themselves. We can even go back through the house and they can look closer at something if they have a friend that works in the industry, so to speak.
Yeah. Is there an amount of home inspections you can do? Or
no, I mean, it's one of these things where if you start down the road of a home inspection, if something comes up in the home inspection that was unexpected, and if you represented the buyer, for instance, we would just go back to the seller and say, hey, there was something that was a bit was unexpected. There's a problem that, well, we don't know if it's a major problem or not. We'd like to come back through. At that point in time, the sellers very rarely would they ever say no. They're typically going, yeah, let's work through this process.
Yeah, because they want to get their house sold.
Yeah. This is the part of the real estate agent thing that we talked about before, is will real estate agents ever go away? And will they ever be replaced by something? This is the process stuff that real estate agents do. We work things along. It's very much no different than the chef in the kitchen. We work things along. We get the final product out there. We make sure it happens.
Yeah. Well, awesome. On that note, that is it for this episode. I think by far the biggest takeaway is home inspections are not scary. Be honest, but not too honest. And let your real estate agent deal with the buyers or the sellers and let them be your communication boat.
The conduit. Yeah.
Yes, that's the word. Because you don't need to have the whole fam jam in.
No.
They're not the professionals unless they are professionals, in which case that's a different story. But each home inspection is different, so make sure you sign up with a real estate agent who's got a great home inspector who treats your house as the individual that it is.
Yeah.
Anyway, on that note, guys, thank you so much for joining us for another one of our other mini episodes. Sorry, I'm having trouble speaking today. We'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you very much for stopping by our channel. If you have any questions or if you're looking to buy or sell, go to our website and contact us today. Knowledge is power and creates experts in understanding. If you want power, hit thumbs up on this video and subscribe to our channel so you can get weekly videos from me, your knowledge broker.